to the second segment of the show for today. The topic is gender harassment in the public arena, and we are talking to Alana McLaughlin, who has been giving us some information about her background, her education, and some of the other things that led her to us this morning to talk about this very, very important topic, gender harassment. Now, Alana, earlier you talked about gender harassment, and you defined gender harassment, and I think you laid down a good foundation for the information that you are about to give us. Now let's continue that information dealing with gender harassment and some of your attitudes in reference to that.
Well, if you just started watching the show, in the first segment I previously talked about how gender relation can be bullying, famously known as cyberbullying. And another form of being able to do cyberbullying is this, which is an iPod Touch. It has all these features, and you could text people, and this can send pictures. That's another way of cyberbullying, which is like, also there's a thing called sexting, where you send nude photos to certain people. And this lady, she sent nude pictures of herself to her boyfriend, and he sent the pictures to over 2,500 other people. So she went to a girl's funeral who had committed suicide, and when she came home, she did it herself. She hung herself in the closet. So you could see how cyberbullying and gender harassment can ruin somebody's life, especially in high, middle, and elementary schools. And also in college, like if you hate somebody or grade somebody, that is also counted as gender harassment. So don't get me wrong when I say, even if I just took my fist and just gave you a big boom in the face, that would still be counted as gender harassment. And you really can't disagree with me, because harassment, that's where all circles: harassment, bullying, hitting, fighting, beating up, teasing, hanging, lynching, beatings, that all expands from harassment.
Harassment, that's it. They all come, and so that's why you wanted to talk about gender harassment in the public arena, so that you did not limit it to just your school situation, and that you could talk about some additional things. What are some of the other instances of gender harassment that you might know of that might be considered international or national? The Coney situation, or perhaps Emmett Till situation. Let's start talking about that as a form of gender harassment. The Emmett Till situation. Start that off for us.
Well, Emmett Till, if you didn't know, was a 14-year-old boy who was born in Chicago but moved to Mississippi with his uncle Mose Wright. And the famous case was that he died on August 28th, 1955, from he was pistol whipped, beaten on his hips and back. His eye was dislodged from the socket, and they put a this all expanded from one stupid incident. And when I say stupid, I mean stupid incident. Okay, so Emmett Till was supposed to go to church on a Sunday, August 27th, which is also my birthday, and he was 1955. He was supposed to go to church that day, which was a Sunday. So matter of fact, no, it was August 28th, I think. Yeah. So he and his cousin Curtis went down to this man named Roy's shop, and they played checkers outside of the store. So when they went into the store, Caroline, her name, there was a lady, Caroline, who was in the store, and she was attending the store because her husband Roy had ran the store. Okay, so Emmett goes out and plays with his cousin Curtis. He was playing checkers. So Curtis dares him to go over there and talk to Caroline, because Emmett had told Curtis that he had experience with white women and that he had a white girlfriend, Caucasian. So he went to the store and supposedly took Caroline by the hand and said, "Baby, go on a date with me. I have experience with white women." So Caroline was so traumatized by the event that she went home and told her husband Roy, and Roy got his half-brother J.W. Washington, and they went down to Mose Wright's home, Emmett Till's uncle. So what they did, they kidnapped Till, and Mose Wright was awake at the time, and J.W. threatened him, saying that if he told anybody about this incident, that he would be murdered too. So they took Emmett and to a slave plantation barn in Drew, Mississippi. So they went down there and they beat him, gouged out his eye, mutilated his face, pistol whipped him. They broke his he had been shot right here, right above the ear, your left ear, and he had also been very brutally beaten. His skull was, I think, cracked a little bit. So the thing is, Curtis, his cousin who I formerly mentioned, who dared him to do this, Curtis was the one who called police to report that Emmett Till had gone missing because he saw what happened with JW and Roy. So they didn't know he was awake, but he witnessed everything that happened to his cousin. So he called police, and then he called Emmett Till's mother, Mary Till, and she was so like traumatized by this event. So 3 days later, 2 boys who went fishing in the Tallahatchie River found Emmett's mutilated body, and his funeral, there were over 10,000 people who attended his funeral, and there was an open casket which showed his mutilated face, and he only had one eye left. So his mother requested to keep the casket open to see how evil the world was and to see what JW and Roy did to her son's body. They mutilated him, like his body just, it even frightened me a little bit. It was just like, how could somebody be so cold-hearted and do this to a 14-year-old boy? What would he mean if he flirted with a white boy? I guess people were that racist back then, because if somebody dared me to flirt with a white man, of course I wouldn't do it, but back then it was a different thing then. And who would kidnap a 14-year-old boy and gouge out his eye? Who can be so cold-hearted to do this to a 14-year-old boy? Well,
now, but I think you indicated earlier that this had something to do with the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People becoming involved in the NAACP. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take our second commercial break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to have you to talk about the NAACP's role in reference to this Emmett Till case. And I think that the information that you've given us in a real sense has sort of laid the foundation and has reinforced this idea that when people talk about gender harassment, they are really talking about people being evil or harmful to people regardless of the gender,
the race,
or the race, or anything else in reference to that. And of course, we'll take this second commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Welcome back to the show this morning.